In the scorching deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, where mirages dance on endless dunes and the Persian Gulf's azure waters meet burning sands, lies a nation whose transformation defies all historical precedent. Today, Qatar stands as one of the world's wealthiest countries per capita, its gleaming skyscrapers piercing the sky like crystal monuments to human ambition. Yet just a century ago, this same land was home to nomadic tribes living in goat hair tents, diving for pearls in treacherous waters, and struggling to survive in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. How did a small peninsula, roughly the size of Connecticut, evolve from a collection of impoverished Bedouin settlements into a global powerhouse that hosts World Cups and shapes international politics? The answer lies in a remarkable journey spanning millennia, filled with tribal warfare, colonial intrigue, economic collapse, and ultimately, one of the most spectacular reversals of fortune in human history. But Qatar's story doesn't begin with oil derricks or luxury hotels. It begins in the ancient sands, where archaeology has revealed human presence dating back over 50,000 years. Stone tools and artifacts scattered across the peninsula tell us that early humans recognized this harsh landscape's hidden potential long before recorded history. They understood something that would echo through the ages. Qatar's strategic position at the crossroads of ancient trade routes made it invaluable, even when it appeared worthless to outsiders. The first major chapter in Qatar's recorded history opened in 628 AD, when the population was introduced to Islam after Muhammad sent an envoy to Munzir ibn Sawa, the Sassanid governor of eastern Arabia. This moment marked more than just religious conversion. It represented Qatar's entry into the broader Islamic world and the beginning of its integration into vast trade networks that would define its identity for centuries. By the 8th century, the region had transformed into a pearl trading center, establishing the foundation of an industry that would sustain Qatar for over a millennium. But understanding Qatar's true origins requires us to look deeper into the desert itself, to the tribes that would shape its destiny. The Bedouins, comprising approximately 10% of Qatar's native population, were traditionally nomadic tribes who roamed the vast deserts of the Arabian Peninsula, unconcerned with political boundaries and recognizing only the authority of their tribal sheikhs. These weren't just wandering herders. They were sophisticated societies with complex social structures, oral traditions spanning generations, and an intimate knowledge of survival in conditions that would defeat most civilizations. The Al-Muslim tribe was the predominant tribal group on the Qatar Peninsula from at least the 16th century. But they weren't alone. The peninsula attracted various tribal confederations, each bringing their own customs, alliances, and conflicts. Other tribes known to have lived in the region before the 18th century included the Al-Naim and the Al-Hawala, a tribal confederation of seafaring Arabs from the Iranian side of the Gulf. These tribes didn't simply exist in isolation. They were part of a complex web of relationships that extended across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. Several Bedouin tribes such as Al-Murra and Al-Ajman migrated to Qatar from regions like Najd and Al-Hassa in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, while others like Naim and Al-Manasir made the journey from the Trucial states. Qatar became a melting pot of tribal cultures, each contributing to what would eventually become Qatari identity. The turning point in Qatar's modern history came in 1766, marking the beginning of a transformation that would reshape the peninsula forever. Qatar's modern history begins conventionally in 1766, with the migration to the peninsula of families from Kuwait, notably the Khalifa family. Their settlement at the new town of Al-Zubarah grew into a small pearl diving and trade center. Al-Zubarah wasn't just another desert settlement. It became a thriving commercial hub that attracted merchants, pearl divers, and entrepreneurs from across the Gulf. The town's strategic location made it perfect for controlling trade routes, and its natural harbors provided safe haven for the pearling fleets that would become Qatar's economic lifeline. But success bred ambition, and ambition bred conflict. In 1783, the Khalifa family led the conquest of nearby Bahrain, marking the beginning of political expansion that would have profound consequences for the entire region. This conquest demonstrated Qatar's growing influence, but also set the stage for the complex territorial disputes that would plague the Gulf for generations. The early 19th century brought new players to Qatar's shores, and with them, the seeds of the modern state. Enter the Al Thani family, the dynasty that continues to rule Qatar today. Their rise to power wasn't immediate or inevitable. It was forged through decades of careful alliance building, strategic marriages, and sometimes brutal conflicts with rival tribes and external powers. The Al Thani family's ascension coincided with Qatar's golden age of pearl diving, an industry that would define the peninsula's economy and culture for over a century. Before oil, the inhabitants of the Gulf's Arab coast depended on diving for natural pearls for their economic livelihoods. And like oil, it was chiefly European and North American demand that dictated the success or failure of each pearling season. Pearl diving was one of the oldest professions in Qatar, dating back to around 4600 BCE. But it was during the 18th and 19th centuries that it reached unprecedented scales. Entire communities were built around the pearling cycle, with men embarking on long voyages, often away from home for months, cramped together on the deck of a ship. The pearl diving industry wasn't just economically significant, it was culturally transformative. It created a unique social structure where tribal sheikhs became maritime entrepreneurs, where desert dwellers became expert swimmers, and where Qatar's isolation was broken by connections to markets in Bombay, Paris, and New York. The pearls pulled from Qatar's waters adorned European royalty and American socialites, making this small peninsula an integral part of the global luxury trade. However, the pearl diving industry had a darker side that modern Qatar rarely discusses. At its peak, it is estimated that a significant portion of pearl divers were enslaved. Despite the 1807 abolition of slavery in the British Empire, slavery was permitted to continue in Qatar for nearly 4 decades after the region became a British protectorate in 1916. This uncomfortable truth reminds us that Qatar's early prosperity was built on exploitation and human suffering, a legacy that would take generations to overcome. The 19th century also saw Qatar caught between competing imperial powers. The Ottoman Empire claimed sovereignty over the peninsula, while British influence grew stronger through trade relationships and military presence in the Gulf. The Al Thani rulers had to navigate these treacherous waters carefully, playing different powers against each other while maintaining their own autonomy. The early 20th century brought both crisis and opportunity. World War I disrupted global trade, but it also forced Qatar to make a crucial decision about its future. In 1916, Sheikh Abdullah bin Jassim Al Thani signed the 11-article Anglo-Qatari Treaty, establishing Qatar as a British protectorate while ensuring its security against external threats and allowing the Al Thani family to maintain internal control. This treaty was controversial, even at the time. Sheikh Abdullah registered his reservation on 3 articles, which he believed encroached on national sovereignty, including Article 7, which allows British nationals to compete with local inhabitants. Despite these concerns, the treaty provided Qatar with the protection it needed during a turbulent period, while preserving enough autonomy for the Al Thani family to govern according to local customs and Islamic law. The 1920s and 1930s brought devastating changes that would have destroyed most nations. The global economic depression, combined with the development of cultured pearls by Japanese innovators, collapsed Qatar's pearl industry almost overnight. The kingdom transformed from a collection of poor fishing and herding tribes led by the Al Thani family, the same one ruling Qatar today. Villages were abandoned, families fled to other Gulf states, and Qatar's population plummeted to fewer than 20,000 people. Yet it was during this darkest period that Qatar's greatest fortune was discovered. In 1939, oil was found at Dukhan, on the western coast of the peninsula. However, World War II delayed significant development, leaving Qataris to wonder if this black liquid would prove more reliable than the pearls that had already betrayed them. The post-war years brought rapid change. Oil production began in earnest in the late 1940s, generating revenues that dwarfed anything the pearl industry had ever produced. But Sheikh Ali bin Abdullah Al Thani, who ruled from 1949 to 1960, proved to be a visionary leader who understood that oil wealth meant nothing without proper governance and infrastructure. The transformation was staggering. Within a decade, Qatar went from having no paved roads, no hospitals, and no schools to building modern infrastructure that rivaled developed nations. The traditional Bedouin lifestyle didn't disappear overnight, but it began to coexist with an increasingly modern society. The 1960s brought new challenges as the British announced their intention to withdraw from the Gulf by 1971. Qatar faced a crucial decision: join the proposed United Arab Emirates or pursue independent statehood. After careful deliberation, Qatar chose independence, declaring sovereignty on September 3, 1971, under the leadership of Sheikh Ahmed bin Ali Al Thani. Independence brought both opportunities and responsibilities. Qatar had to establish diplomatic relations, build government institutions, and prove it could survive as one of the world's smallest nations. The discovery of the massive North Field natural gas reservoir in 1971 provided the economic foundation for this ambitious project. The 1970s and 1980s saw Qatar emerge as a regional power despite its small size. The ruling family invested oil revenues in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, while maintaining traditional values and Islamic governance. They also began diversifying the economy, recognizing that dependence on hydrocarbons alone was unsustainable. In 1995, a bloodless coup brought Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani to power, ushering in an era of unprecedented transformation. He launched Al Jazeera television network in 1996, making Qatar a major player in global media and diplomacy. His vision extended far beyond oil wealth. He wanted Qatar to become a bridge between East and West, a center for education and culture, and a mediator in international conflicts. The new millennium saw Qatar pursue an increasingly ambitious foreign policy. The country hosted peace talks, mediated regional conflicts, and used its wealth to gain influence far beyond what its size would suggest. The establishment of Education City, featuring branches of prestigious American universities, demonstrated Qatar's commitment to becoming a knowledge-based economy. Qatar's selection to host the 2022 FIFA World Cup represented the ultimate validation of its transformation. Despite controversy over human rights issues and the treatment of migrant workers, the tournament showcased Qatar's ability to organize massive international events and highlighted its journey from a forgotten corner of the Arabian Peninsula to a global player. The economic diversification continues today under Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, who took power in 2013. Qatar's sovereign wealth fund has invested globally in everything from London real estate to American technology companies. The country has also weathered regional boycotts and global economic uncertainty, proving the resilience built over decades of careful planning. Today's Qatar bears little resemblance to the pearl-diving settlements of a century ago. Tourists take in Doha's skyline on dhows, the traditional wooden boats used by pearl divers, a nod to when the kingdom was a collection of poor fishing and herding tribes. Skyscrapers reach toward the heavens, where Bedouin tents once stood, and air-conditioned luxury has replaced the harsh desert existence of previous generations. Yet Qatar's rapid transformation raises important questions about identity, sustainability, and social change. How does a nation preserve its cultural heritage while embracing radical modernization? How does a society of fewer than 300,000 citizens govern a country where foreign workers outnumber locals by nearly 10 to 1? These challenges will define Qatar's future as much as oil wealth defined its recent past. The story of Qatar is ultimately a story about the unpredictability of history and the power of strategic vision. A small peninsula that was largely ignored by major powers for centuries became one of the world's most influential nations through a combination of natural resources, geographic luck, and shrewd leadership. From Bedouin camps to global summits, from pearl diving to hosting World Cups, Qatar's journey reminds us that in the modern world, size doesn't determine significance. As Qatar looks toward the future, it faces the same challenge that has confronted every successful civilization: how to maintain prosperity and influence in a changing world. The pearl beds that once sustained the peninsula are now largely forgotten. The oil that transformed the nation will eventually run out, and the natural gas that currently powers the economy won't last forever. But if Qatar's history teaches us anything, it's that this small nation has repeatedly proven its ability to adapt, survive, and thrive against impossible odds. The complete history of Qatar is still being written, with each new chapter adding complexity to a story that began in the ancient sands and now reaches into the stars. From the Bedouin tribes who first recognized this harsh land's potential to the modern leaders who transformed it into a global power, Qatar's journey stands as one of history's most remarkable transformations, proof that sometimes the most extraordinary stories come from the most unexpected places. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. I also create videos on the history of different countries and empires, so check out those too.